I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today and the pleasure of her being one of my friends. In fact, I came back from a conference today because she told me, "You made me go tell my story and you're at a conference? You better be on the road." So I am thrilled to introduce Nyota. Nyota Gensky is an MBA and award-winning businesswoman, philanthropist, and speaker. She inspires and empowers clients, associates, and audiences to ignite their passions and pursue greatness. She founded Gensky & Co., an accounting and HR firm based in Orlando, Florida. It is a woman-owned, woman-operated firm that focuses on the individual needs and successes of companies and organizations. In 2022, Gensky & Co. won the very coveted Seminole County Best Small Business Award of the year. And in January 2023, she won Best Women-Owned Business in Central Florida. Yeah. In February 2023, she joined the ranks of many women in this room as an Orlando Business Journal's prestigious 40 Under 40. From 2004 to 2012, she worked in accounting and finance for major nonprofits and publicly traded companies while rising through the ranks of corporate America. She ultimately reached VP Finance at an international nonprofit. But in 2013, she decided to open her own firm and make her dreams come true. She is the definition of a hustler entrepreneur with a failure is not an option attitude. Please join me in welcoming Nyota.
Whew, that's a lot to follow up. All right, let me set my timer so that everybody has plenty of time. My name is Nyota, and I am so nervous. So let me just start by saying that. Thank you so much for telling everything about my story and how I got here. But I'd like to add on to this, that I remember sitting here in a professional women's luncheon, my very first one, about 3 years ago, and the speaker was absolutely amazing. And she has no idea the impact she had on my life. But at that time, listening to her, she inspired me so much that I grew my business exponentially because of a cornerstone moment that this woman did at this very podium. So if I can at the very least inspire 1 or 2 or 20 of you in this room to do the very same thing, then I will consider this a massive success. Also, why not? I do own an accounting firm, but we all are supposed to have hobbies and things that we want to be challenged with and things we want to do with our lives. And I remember at that very same PWL, this woman was inspiring me so much that I thought, I want to be just like her one day. So just let me pause for a moment, because here I am, attempting to live this same life and really carry on the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of tenacity and perseverance that she taught me that day. And yeah, so this is cool, very different for me, but very exciting. All right, so are you ready? This is going to be a little bit of a roller coaster story. Just preparing you, put your seatbelts on, we're gonna go through some emotions here. Because like anybody who gets to a place where they are really, standing up trying to inspire others, that's because they've really had to work through it, work through some things in their life that got them here. So I'm not going to call this my villain story, not my origin story, because I'm not a superhero, but I'm certainly going to tell you the story of myself and how we got here and why I'm standing up here. So just like anybody else's story, not everything is rainbows and butterflies, right? So like I said, this might be a little bit of a sad story, but I promise it has a happy ending, okay? So I'm going to transport you back to 2006. I had just graduated with my bachelor's degree, and I got my very first job in accounting. And then I quit. And then I went to my next job, and I got fired. And I went to my next job and my next job and my next job, multiple, many, many, many jobs, because I was fired or quit every single one of them within 4 to 6 months, easily. I thought I knew it all, and I thought I could do everything better than everyone else, which was my Achilles heel. However, it taught me a lot, and it let me get to here because, man, I did bounce around. I feel guilty in hindsight, but I learned so much. I went from this accounting to this accounting to this accounting, and at the time I felt so guilty, but I also knew that for some reason, there was a reason I couldn't be stuck where I was. I was never going to be a long-term anywhere that I was, and I always thought, that's really sad, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but it built me to this place, and it's easier to see it in retrospect, but not at the time when I couldn't figure out why I never belonged anywhere. And some of that obviously was my fault because I thought I should be the CFO with like no years of experience. So, my bad. But now I am, so yay! Awesome. Okay, so after, while I was gallivanting around jobs, I was gallivanting around the country. I literally couch surfed with my friends. I lived in my car. I interviewed for Jim Henson. You know, I did all of these really great things, and I had just this wonderful experience of living what I think every 20-year-old should do. If anybody young or older comes to me and says, I feel really lost, I don't know what I do, I say, quit your job, get a remote job, travel the country, travel the world, experience absolutely everything you can, because now is the time to develop your character. Develop who you are, because I spent so many years trying to figure out who I was and why I was the way I was and why people didn't like the person that I was. Why? It didn't make sense. So if I have younger sisters, I have other people that I talk to, and all I say is throw caution to the wind for a little while and really, really figure it out, because eventually you get older and you start a business and you have 2 kids and you're like, whew, I would like to do something fun, you know? So I had this wonderful, wonderful life, and I absolutely loved it, and I felt absolutely invincible. Truly, until I was not anymore. So at some point, I made it back to my hometown. I was like this big city girl coming to my small town. You know, I felt very cool. And I had saved up my money because I didn't pay rent to any of the couches I lived on. So I had this little down payment, and I bought this house right in the middle of my town. They had one stoplight. It wasn't a big deal, but I did it. I think it was $43,000 for a house, like really, really huge. But I felt like maybe it was time for me to start putting down some roots. So life was great. I was really, really still happy. Then I fell in love. So that's where this story starts. Do not recommend. Just kidding. Sorry. Okay. So I have to read this off my paper. I fell in love, madly, blindly, crazily in love. The ignore all of the red flags and forfeit all reasonable suspicion type of love. I ignored everyone around me who said this is a bad idea. And I overlooked everything I knew deep to my core was an awful idea. And then I walked down the aisle. So that's great. But it was love, and, you know, it's a part of life. Everybody makes mistakes. And truthfully, I still don't consider it the greatest mistake of my life because, well, you'll hear more. Okay, so here's where it gets a little sad. I walked down the aisle, and it was beautiful. It was New Year's Eve. We had this beautiful golden themed everything, a live band. We had a Michael Jackson impersonator who like danced. It was so cool. it was just a very, very magical night, and I got to ring in the new year with all of my best friends and the love of my life. But then I went back to my hotel room, and I proceeded to essentially lose my husband. So my wedding night, I slept alone in my hotel room and cried myself to sleep. More so, when I had come in, my family and friends had brought all of our gifts, all of our everything from the wedding. And when I walked into the room, the gifts were ripped open everywhere, and all of the gifts and all of the cash were gone. And I had thought, surely somebody robbed me. But it wasn't. It was my husband. So I slept alone my first night. The very next day, I still had no idea where my husband was. And I went home, and I sat there freaking out, pretty sure this wasn't how it was supposed to go. And I got a phone call from one of my family members who had flown in for the wedding, so he had not met my husband at the time. And he said, "I'm getting on the flight right now, and I just have a question for you." He said, "Why would you marry a heroin addict?" I'm sorry, what? He's like, "I gotta go." No, wait, what? I'm sorry. So he was like, "Oh my God, you have no idea, do you?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you got the wrong person." And he was like, "Go to the front closet and check the black pocket in the front, da 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 da." And that's how I found out. That is how I found out that my husband was actually a heroin addict, because I lived this beautiful, shiny, glimmering life. And I truly thought drugs were like pot. Like, I mean, I didn't even think these other things were like a part of real life. I was very ignorant to all of it. So 3 days later, my husband was in rehab. There was no honeymoon. There was no beautiful story, beautiful anything. I had to fake it and smile it and sit there by myself and be confused, lost, sad, embarrassed, and in a complete haze, not understanding what had just happened to my life. Over the next couple of weeks, he stayed in rehab, and I covered everything. "Where's your husband?" "Oh, he got pulled away for work." You know, "What are you guys doing for your honeymoon?" "Oh, something came up. They canceled the flight. We have to reschedule." And now I became like this person living this life that I had no idea who I even was. Like, I personally had no idea who I was. So it was tough. It was a really, really tough, pump the brakes. I don't know what's going on. After a couple weeks, he left rehab, and I was so naive. I thought, surely he's fine, right? It's literally that easy. Celebrities do this all the time. It's fine. I just left Hollywood. It's fine. So, too much information, but we consummated the marriage, finally. And a couple weeks later, I was pregnant. So, talk about timing. Just when I kind of thought, okay, this is where my life kind of changes and pivots, and maybe I'm not going to be married, I'm pregnant. So I promise there's a happy ending coming. I just have a little bit more stuff to say. So my entire pregnancy was awful. I had never dealt with an addict, so I didn't know the tricks and everything that somebody can do to somebody they love or that you think they love, and the absolute fear that comes with loving an addict. I believe there's a saying, 1 in 8 have loved an addict. So if you think I'm standing up here and I'm one of 200, there's a good chance somebody at the table you're at or the table next to you knows exactly what I'm going through. So I'm sorry for that, and I'm glad you're here. So I was pregnant basically alone. I had some family, some friends, but by then I had completely disassociated from absolutely everybody who was around me. I did not talk to anybody. I I held myself so close because I was so scared. Um, I was isolated and embarrassed and still extremely confused. So I was alone for 8 months of my pregnancy. And there were nights when I would drive around the grossest parts of the city looking for my husband, hoping he would just come home because maybe a baby would be enough. But by this time, he was full blown, 1,000% into his addiction. So he was past the irregular use, kind of this still holding down a job. That was over. He was gone at this point, which if you've ever loved somebody who is an addict, it's really hard because you know how wonderful a person is when they're sober, when they're clean. That's the person you married, that's the person you love. So to then see them in this different aspect when they genuinely don't know who you are, it's a very, very difficult situation to be in. So eventually, I went into labor, kind of. My blood pressure was so high that I had to go to the hospital because I was diagnosed with preeclampsia, which is a very deadly pregnancy symptom that you can have. So I went into the hospital, and somehow my husband made it. Didn't know how he got there, but he was there. So I went into labor by induction because I was literally dying as I was trying to survive. So literally I was going in and out of consciousness. My organs were all collapsing. I was vomiting everywhere. It was this awful experience. And the next thing I know is I'm in the ICU and I had stopped breathing altogether. I didn't know about my baby. I didn't know anything. I was just in this creepy room by myself with this lady who was just happy I woke up. So thankful for that lady, actually, to this day. When I finally got out of the ICU, I got to hold my beautiful baby. And I realized that no matter what, everything was worth it because I had him. And I didn't even know him really, but he's amazing. My husband had only shown up to steal my purse. So when I finally came out and everything was this or that, I got whenever my phone eventually did, and he had managed to take all of the money I had, all of the credit cards I had, my bank stubs or whatever, everything, and left me again. So as if dying wasn't bad enough, I felt like I was dying all over inside, but a different way. So eventually they released my son and I to go home. And miraculously, my husband showed up for that. Scared the crap out of me, to be honest. And then we went home. But first we had to stop because I had a C-section and get my pain prescriptions because I was really bad. I got it. We went to go home. He took my entire prescription, down the entire thing, kicked me and my son out of the car, and he never came home again. So I swear to God, I swear it gets better, okay? I promise it gets better. He had racked up $47,000 in credit card debt, pawn shop debt, payday loans, and everything else. So here I was with a brand new baby after not barely making it. And honestly, really, really mourning the fact that I lost the love of my life, which is hard to say when somebody's so mean to you, but you're still really sad you lost them. So I remember the moment when I I actually ended up getting hospitalized again because obviously that's a lot of stress. So once I came back from that one, it was just me and my son, and I thought, I am actually going to die if I do not figure this out now. So I remember the exact moment when I was sitting on the floor of my disgusting apartment, and I was holding my baby boy, and I listened to him breathe, right? That's what we do. We listen to these breaths. And as I listened to him breathe, I breathed him in. And with every breath, I got a little stronger. I got, okay, I can do this. And I made the choice at that moment to give up or go for it. Rise up. This was it, right? This was it. I was going to die. I was going to spend my life looking for my husband, or I was going to give my son and myself a way better life. So, I had to write this down. Like a beaten and battered phoenix, I began emerging from the ashes. And that is when the story changed. That is when I decided, I know who I am. I know that people loved me in my 20s. I know that I lived a beautiful, beautiful life that would absolutely go to waste, right? And most importantly, I had a little man in front of me that was going to love me like the rest of my life. And so who can't go on? I had to. So I decided that I was working a full-time job also this whole time. Miraculously, they didn't fire me. So I went to them and I said, hey, can I start working a side job? I need a little extra money. Nobody knew anything, but I was like, I need a little extra money. And they said yes. And so from there, I knew somebody else that owned an accounting firm who was very important in my life. And I said, hey, Mom, could I do some work for you on the side? Can I take payroll? Because everybody hates payroll. And she said, yeah, you can start doing payroll. So I started just doing payroll on the side. And eventually I talked to more people, and I started growing this payroll business. I hated it. So I quit that. I like to call it a pivot. It's more professional to call it a pivot now. So I pivoted from payroll. And I still worked my full-time job. And then I slowly started saying, okay, I'm going to get little clients and just do bookkeeping because I can do bookkeeping. That's not a big deal. So I started doing my bookkeeping, and it was really hard. This was all in Portland, Oregon. So I moved from Portland, Oregon to Orlando, Florida. I decided this was it. This is my place. These are my people, right? No offense to Oregonians, but we are not the same people. So here we are. So I moved down here, and this really cool thing. I got hired as a bookkeeper, and then they said, can you take on our accounting? And then can you take on more? And I know a friend. And then what I ended up doing was having a full-time job, and then a full-time job. So I began working 3 literal full-time jobs. By the way, this was before it was not socially acceptable. So this was before COVID when nobody else knew my trick. I think that's why I got away with it. But let me be very clear. I hustled. There was nothing like, I worked 3 jobs. No, babe. I worked 3 jobs that expected the exact same thing from me at every single one. I was flying to Colorado every 3 weeks, taking PTO from one, trying to do it over here. And eventually I hired one of my best friends, and I said, I don't know if I can keep doing this, but if you could help me, I would appreciate it. And so she did. She helped me and just kind of took on some smaller clients. From there, it just kind of kept growing. But I wasn't really sure it's what I wanted, because I wanted another baby, right? So I had these 3 jobs, and now I had some help, and I thought to myself, I do not want a husband. I could tell you that right now. But I would like a baby. So I did the work. I did something else. I like to really think of myself as like, a trendsetter here. I went to Brown and Brown in Orlando. I think that's the Brown Fertility Clinic. And I said, hey, can you check this? Can you see if everything's okay? I think I'd like to have a baby. Like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. So we tested it, and I was 38 years old. No, I wasn't. I was 32. No, it went fast. So I was very nervous because now I was, what do they call it? High risk, because I was too old to have babies. Thank you. I was not too old. So I did this cool thing in case anybody ever wants to do this in their life. You can go to different sperm banks, and they have a portfolio of eligible men. Like, this is great, right? Okay. I get to know everything about them, and I don't even have to talk to them. So then I went a little bit further, and what I found out is that you can actually send in a picture of a loved one or Brad Pitt, whoever you want to, and they will search the database and see if anybody looks kind of like the person that you sent in. So begrudgingly, I sent in a picture of my ex-husband, right? Because inevitably I wanted my children to kind of look like we all came from the same home. And if you ever saw my children now, you would know they just look like me, like 1,000% like me. So that was just extra steps. But I got pregnant on my 3rd round of IVF, which was absolutely amazing. They say not to worry until 6 months. So after the first month, of course, I was panicking that maybe everybody was right, but they were not. So I proceeded to have a beautiful baby girl. So I love it, right? I now am the mom of 2 beautiful children that are mine, and nobody can ever take that away from me. So that's just another, it's not work related, but man, you want to talk about perseverance. I am exhausted. So it was after my daughter was about 2 years old that I decided at that time, again, pivotal moment, where I said, all right, Ginsky & Co. is either going to go or it's just going to stay. Which one am I okay with? And of course, I was not okay with just staying. So I went for it. I said, I'm really going to do this. Like, actually, I severely suffered with imposter syndrome. So I was not sure I could do anything, but I worked through it. I didn't even make a game plan, of course, but I started going to networking events. I owe so much to the Seminole County Chamber, actually, really. They are like family to me in so many ways that nobody probably even knows. And I have such great friends. I have great people in my life, great family who supported me, and I'm very thankful for that. But ultimately, it really comes down to the fact that if you are struggling with something, am I worthy? Am I able? Am I capable? Every dang negative thing that goes through your mind, every person that hurt you, every person that told you you cannot do this, nobody likes you, you're too much, you're too this, you're too that. Screw them. Like, don't listen to them. Like, thank you. I want you to tell. I have to tell myself this, and that's why I say it to you guys. We are the only ones that can truly affect the change in our life that we want to see. And it's not easy. Every day is an absolute struggle. To be clear, I can stand here and still, I was just telling my lovely friend here, some days I want to wake up and still quit my job, but I can't do that anymore. So I persevere and I continue on. But actually, as I mentioned before, I came to a PWL before and thought, I want to be just like her. And I'm so excited that you all are here because this is actually something that I'm very passionate about in the next stage of my life. So my voice was shaking so much. I was so nervous because this is me literally putting one foot in front of the other in something that is so foreign and so scary. And I couldn't do it in a better room of people, I can tell you that. But again, it's not giving up. It's Emmeline saying, do you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do it, And I cried a little this morning because standing here is a dream, literally 3 years in the making, even though I never told anybody, but it's coming true. And I think that if we just continue to push ourselves further and further and further along, then I believe that this time next year I could meet any of you. And hopefully if you put the work in yourselves and not in listening to anybody else, then, you can achieve whatever you want, really. I mean, the lady that spoke at the PWL, she wanted to be an astronaut so bad. I don't know if anybody was there, but she wanted to be an astronaut. And she couldn't because she was a female at the time. And man, she actually never gave up. And at the PWL, she was talking about how she was finally getting the opportunity to go into low orbit space. And I thought, if she could wait a freaking lifetime, I can wait just a little bit longer. So I guess that kind of wraps this up. I don't have any more notes. They were illy put together anyway. So, and I'm right on time. So I guess there's a Q&A session if anybody wants questions or answers. All right. Great question. Just so everybody knows, where is he now? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. You cannot move forward if you are looking back.